Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order this Committee of the Whole of the Pierce County Council. It is Wednesday, October 25th, 2023. The time is 9:33 a.m. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Thank you. Councilmember Campbell.
Here.
Councilmember Kruger.
Excused.
Thank you. Councilmember Denson.
Here.
Councilmember Herrera.
Excused.
Councilmember Hitchin.
Here.
Councilmember Morell.
Excused.
And Councilmember Mello.
Here.
You have 4 members present.
We have 4 members present and a quorum. Item number 3 is approval of our agenda. This morning in Committee of the Whole, we have the Economic Development Department for their biennial budget presentation and also the Department of Emergency Management for the same. And reserving time for councilmember discussion at the end of our morning session. Any objections to the agenda as presented? Not seeing any. Let's move right into it. Item number 4, Economic Development Biennial Budget Presentation. Mr. Boki.
Thank you very much, Chair Mello, Paul Boki, Council staff. The Economic Development Department is in the General Fund, and it's in the General Government tab of your budget book. That's Section 5, page 19. It is in the general fund. I don't see a decision package in regards to nothing in the decision package in regards to the Economic Development Department. I may be wrong, so we'll hear that in a few minutes. I would note, however, that there is a significant element in the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act. There's a significant element of the funding that's going in that's budgeted or proposed by the executive to go through the Economic Development Department. So with that, I'll turn it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, Councilmember Kruger has joined us. I'd like to invite up to the podium the Director of our Economic Development Department, Ms. Betty Capistani, to begin her presentation. Good morning, Madam Director.
Good morning, Chair Mello and members of the Council. I'm Betty Capistani, Director of Economic Development. I'm also joined here today by Deputy Director Gary Westcott and our Administrative Assistant Valerie Cody, just in case you ask a wonderful question that I need a lifeline answer to.
It's encouraged.
They know everything. So to start off, we'll go to the first slide, which is the slide of all your different priorities. You'll see our box is traditionally the economic and workforce slide, so we're focused on jobs and talent. But we also in economic development, as you know, touch a lot of different areas because our talent needs great housing and affordable housing. Our talent, if we have jobs for our talent, hopefully we keep them from being in the homeless or working and using a lot of our stability programs, and hopefully we keep them out of the justice system. So we kind of have little touches there, but really it's all focused around jobs. And our overarching goal is to mold Pierce County's economy into one that's inclusive, resilient, and future ready. And we want to make sure we have a community where everyone thrives. But like I said, our efforts are laser focused on business. Our organizational chart is the next page, and I think you all know everyone on our team. So our programs consist of the tourism, the arts, and economic development specialists, our administrative assistant, office assistant, our senior economic development specialist, and our assistant to the executive for business services, and our deputy director. The next slide. So we do a lot of things. It was hard to put them into 4 boxes. So I'm going to try to, I think you probably know what those boxes are. But underneath the economic development, so this is our traditional box, our focus is on entrepreneurship and small business development and programs. So what we like to say is we're catalyzing entrepreneurship to fuel economic growth and generational wealth. Our other programs are tied to recruitment and project advocacy to assist businesses to locate in Pierce County. The next bucket would be for reinvestment, so retention of companies in Pierce County. A lot of that is done through data and analytics, so making sure whether it's drive counts or circles, there's a lot of information businesses use in that process, so that's a part of our work there. The piece that I probably want to amplify greatly, and I think you get a lot of leverage for your resources in economic development, none of this is done in a silo. It's done with a lot of partnership and collaboration, and we really work together to magnify our impact to promote Pierce County as a place of choice for businesses and for talent to live. So our next slide shows our FTEs. In the Economic Development Department, we have 6 full-time FTEs. We have 1 tourism FTE, and that's paid for by both of our tourism funds. We, in this budget, have a package request for 1 FTE to be paid through American Rescue Plans, and that's our limited duration position. And then we currently have a part-time FTE in arts. Any questions? So the next page, boy, this is a hard one. You said critical needs and challenges, and all of them are probably bigger than all of our budgets combined. But the biggest piece that we find is attracting jobs and really the businesses of the future jobs, and making sure we have the talent skill alignment. Currently, there is no one in our county that does proactive recruitment. We would say when people call us, or they call the Economic Development Board, or they call a city or town to say, I'm interested in your community, we've been doing that kind of recruitment. So we really want to work on how can we attract proactively companies of the future in jobs, and showing that we have the skill set and talent to fill those jobs. So that's one of our chicken or the egg, and it goes kind of to the next one when we talk about talent and residents skilled for those higher paying jobs. We have a lot of amazing talent that's employed. We don't necessarily know what their skill sets are, so it's hard to attract some of those jobs that we want to be here because they don't see that on those people looking for jobs. It's also hard for our workforce board. They can't go fund a program that they don't know that's going to exist for sure that an employer is going to come. So it's kind of a little bit of that chicken or egg, so that we work around those edges in that process. A lot of our work on the next one is on that entrepreneurship and sustainability. So we've just, as of last night, launched 349 people through our Pierce County Business Accelerator. So part of our goal is we want to keep hopefully having them be sustained in their companies and keep that small business resiliency going. We do a lot of work also with our community navigators in this piece. And then our last one is one that I know, Chair Mello, you've been kind of trying to figure out how you make things work. It's targeted specific investment, and a lot of times what we're finding is there's a gap. And so whether it's tools like tax increment financing or the multifamily housing, I mean, what do we do to help fill the gap, to spur development or redevelopment in areas that we really want to have? Like we've been talking Parkland Spanaway, but there's a gap. And what can we do? What resources can we do, or what can we advocate at the legislature to be able to have to help make that? And once we do 1 or 2, then the rest come because we've kind of proven the market. So those are areas that when we're looking at that high altitude of critical needs or things that would help us in our process. Our department priorities, and I've kind of mentioned these a few times, but entrepreneurship and small business resiliency and stability are a big focus. Attracting new higher paying jobs in key growth sectors, increasing private sector investment and reinvestment, strengthening talent and workforce alignments, promoting tourism and the visitor economy, strengthening arts and culture economy. Any questions on those?
Let's pause there and see if there's any questions about anything we've heard before we get to the department's decision packages. We'll start with Councilmember Denson.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Cavastani. I love your jacket. That is so fun and colorful. I had a question about your priorities. We had a discussion yesterday about our Sustainability 2030 plan, and we talked a lot about the interaction between economic development and sustainability initiatives, and talked about our desire to have more clean energy jobs and industry brought to Pierce County. I think that's something that I'm excited about, and I can't speak for everybody, but I think so.
That's one of our key growth areas that we would like to attract, and we've been working on a couple, but we don't have them secured yet.
Great. Well, that's what I just wanted to make sure in your key growth sectors. So
Yes.
that was one of them. And I know yesterday I mentioned that Washington was part of a collaborative that was identified by the federal government for some clean energy dollars. And I'm wondering, is Pierce County involved in that? I just assumed that we were and hope that we are, but I'm hoping, because I know it's multi-state collaborative, and I'm wanting to make sure that some of those dollars come to Pierce County.
Right, and we're working collaboratively with like the EDB, with a lot of our different partners in the economic development, so we could have a piece of that action. But the clean jobs and green jobs, that is a key growth area, and you see it with all the numbers. I know we've been working with TPU on a hydrogen company to be in Frederickson. That is still a ways out, and it's still part of it. It also takes a lot to put it together. So if everything got signed like today, it would still be 26 or 27, just because the infrastructure to put it all together takes a while. But we've been really trying to target those areas, but then also make sure the talent is skilled to be able to have those jobs and not have jobs imported in. So I think those are the pieces that we're really focused on. And then in addition to things like some of the talent that comes out of the military, especially in technology, so whether it's cybersecurity or other areas, currently if they leave the military, they may live in Pierce County, but they may go up to King County for their jobs. So trying to figure out how can we capture more of those and be clusters driven around that area that make them be able to stay and live and work here.
Great. And you mentioned talent because that's a concern. If we're moving to different types of industry, we want to make sure that we're bringing our workforce along with us. And I know there's concerns from the labor groups, some concerns. Just making sure that we are working perhaps with WorkSource or your other collaborative partners to upskill our good workers so that we make sure that they can make that transition into the new industries that we might be proliferating here in Pierce County.
And I think it's a combination of the upskilling for those jobs and also a combination of having those jobs so the talent that lives here doesn't have to go somewhere else to work that job. So I think it's a probably equal partnership, but we have to be able to show that because companies, when they look at coming to Pierce County, they may look at who's looking for work and they may look at who's unemployed, and that may not be their market. They don't see the talent that's employed or the talent tied to the military. And so we're trying to figure out better ways to tell that story and have that analysis so they realize we do have a lot of great talent. We have a lot of our educational institutions are doing amazing things and even tied to that tech area. So really highlighting those stories and it's that, like I said, the chicken or the egg, and we're just trying to get it all landed.
Perfect. And I know I've talked to, for example, the machinists and IBEW who want to be partners, who want to be proactive in this and helping, because I think we see the writing on the wall. We see that we're moving towards this, which is really positive in so many ways for the future. And so I just encourage you to make sure that those partners are at the table so that they can be helping make this really successful. And then the last key growth sector, you might be talking about this in the future, but you mentioned community gaps. You mentioned challenges for people with jobs. In addition to housing, childcare is a huge issue in probably all of our districts. And there's just, I have a rural component to my district, and it's just beyond challenging to get childcare. It's because of water availability, fire suppression codes. It's really a challenge. So anything that you can do to help us, I think, will help the workers, which will in turn help our businesses. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do understand that pain. I'm really glad I'm past that pain point personally, but
Me too.
Major workforce challenge. Thank you for lifting up all those important areas. Economic development is not one thing, and
It's so
all these
important.
different pieces have to work if we want a strong economy. So thanks for lifting those up. For the record, Councilmember Morell and Herrera have joined us. Councilmember Coover.
Thank you, Chair. My question is basically in the same realm. I just was wanting to ask you to identify the key growth sectors. So I heard energy, the IT and tech, and what were the other focus?
And then we still want to work on our traditional, so we have the advanced manufacturing and aerospace, and the good news is aerospace is starting to tick up, which means our suppliers, so that's a positive economic indicator for Pierce County because we have a lot of jobs in that area. Also, the global trade logistics is a huge piece of our cluster. Medical is a large piece. and the military is a large piece. If you take our big economics, and we have a lot underneath there, but I think we realized during the pandemic, probably about 85% of our jobs were the smaller companies, and those are all really critical in the economy, but we need to bring in some bigger to also help grow our economy for jobs and also sustainability for our smaller companies, many of which could be part of the supply chain.
Can you identify any of the objections that maybe companies that you speak to about coming here, that why they say, no, I don't want to go to Pierce County or Washington State?
I think everything is different and everything's unique. We probably, as you all are aware of, there's a plus that we're one of two states that gives no incentives, and that's probably good because that's how we operate. But we do compete against states that give away incentives like land or other pieces of the equation. We usually try to sell based on our environment. Talent really likes our environment. They like the space of the workspace. We also try to actually play off of, so you'll probably see the GeekWire article that was earlier this week, that Seattle's #1 for tech talent. But we know a lot of them live here. So if we can play off some of that, and a lot of the companies, the employees don't want to go back to work. They want to work remote. So trying to figure out, can we do hubs or other things that we can capture some of those jobs. But every company may be different. It may be their circle. It may be where their suppliers are. It may be where the CEO lives. There's just a lot of things in play. But I will say we're getting more people looking at coming here. There was a company that heard the exec speak at a conference for AWB, and then Kevin and I have been working with them for over a year. They are coming to Pierce County. They actually live in Pierce County, and with that, she's bringing 3 or 4 other advanced manufacturers that are small. So things are starting to happen, which is really good. And when we see Boeing also start going up, that helps a lot of our suppliers. So I think we want to build on what we have, but then also at the same time attract those, because you can read all these jobs, you can see things out there, and trying to figure out how do we get just a little teeny tiny piece of that global market.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And we are ranked by a number of different independent sources as a great place to do business. Not only Pierce County, but Washington State is ranked towards the very top, if not the top, of many, many different independent sources as a great place to do business. And that's not on accident. That's not luck. It's a lot of hard work to do what is needed to attract jobs and workers. Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. I think my only question, I have several, but at this pause, my only question is about the arts position. So it's half-time coming from Arts Fund and then half-time, like, I'm trying to understand the
Would you like me to
0.5 FTE.
That's on the next slide. I
Oh, well,
would
then
be
we'll
glad
just wait.
to-
See, I thought I had
Do you
it in the right
You're always
spot.
ahead of me. Is there any other question you have on the current one? Because I'd be glad to go there if the chairs.
We still have more lights,
Okay.
so we'll
Yeah.
get to the FTEs.
I'm good.
Thank you, Councilmember Hitchin. Councilmember Morell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Always a pleasure to have economic development in front of us. And I won't compliment you on your coat, but it is nice. I think you touched on this a little bit, and I know the chair touched on it. It's a holistic approach to economic development. Not one thing is going to bring a company here. And one of the things that we have a challenge is if a big employer decided to locate in Pierce County, where would their employees live? Housing is a huge issue out in this area, so we need to continue to develop our workforce housing out there, and you're aware of that too. But one of the things that I see as a strong growth area, and you touched on it, was the aerospace, the warehouse, logistic industry. Can you explain why that is so closely tied to Pierce County's economy?
The aerospace? Is
The
that?
aerospace and the warehousing logistics.
Okay, so you probably have two different pieces in the equation. So the aerospace, we're just a beneficiary of Boeing being in the marketplace, and they've done such a great job over the years. And I will tell you, I'm a product of a Boeing exec. So my kids got to go to college thanks to Boeing stock. So I'm pretty invested in that piece. But that supply chain, and you've seen at the air show, that's probably the most amazing thing to see the aerospace supply chain. It's probably one of the deepest, most advanced supply chains of any that I know that exist. And so we really have a lot of beneficiaries of that, being all the different parts of the planes that are manufactured. And so a lot of times it's figuring out then where do those get stored. And with that, Boeing's actually going to be announcing very shortly 850,000 more square feet that they will be leasing in Pierce County, because they need places to store all those pieces of the plane to make sure the alignment, because their ramp up is going to be really fast, and they've been asking suppliers to ramp up. So that ties in that piece. It also ties to what we call e-commerce, and that really expanded dramatically during the pandemic. Everybody wants something now, and so figuring out a lot of that warehouse distribution connectivity has tied to that e-commerce marketplace. If you're looking at the Amazons and those kinds, and it doesn't matter your furniture, whatever you want, you decide you're going to get it, you want it tomorrow, and so that's helping that last mile of those pieces. We are starting to see, and there was one example in Puyallup, and I always think when you look at land, it always has different uses. An old Boeing sewing machine factory turned into a Kia in Renton. So we've started to see in Puyallup actually a warehouse was turned into advanced manufacturing. So there is product, that product can be used in different life cycles depending on what the marketplace has. So it's connectivity to all of our different key sectors is probably a better way to answer your question.
Okay. Thank you for that response. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think we're ready to move to your decision package.
Okay, so on the next page, our decision packages, we had two that you see before you. The first one, and so you are aware, we had a limited term position, and basically we have not used any of the ARPA funds for admin for our department, any of the CARES funds, any of that. This time we're asking to use an OA2 position in ARPA funds, and that's for a limited term of 2 years to fulfill the rest of our ARPA, and they do all the coordination with our programs that we have. So we currently have just been having that out of the general fund, and for this budget, we're asking that to move to ARPA, and you'll see that decision package in there. The second one, last budget cycle, you gave us a 0.5 arts person, and thank you, Councilmember Campbell. I know that was an area that you were very passionate about, and she's actually grown the program tremendously, and there's a huge list of things that we can do. And so what we would like to do is use that other 0.5, actually from 1% from the arts, which there is a precedence of using that for staff resources. So we did check the budget with that, and we checked with finance to make sure that was a legitimate use to be able to do that. And along that line, it looks like we could have potentially 1% for the arts projects coming up in this next biennium. So the timing is really good if that's what the council chooses to do.
Vice Chair Kimball.
So following up on that one, when the halftime was proposed, there was some uncertainty as to what they would do. So what has a halftime arts employee benefited? How have you found that an asset to the department?
Well, I really should have Valerie come up here, because Valerie will tell you it's tremendous what she's done. And actually, we just now have, this is going to be an outside answer coming inside. We just had an arts position open, and we used to have a hard time filling them, and we work with all of you to fill those. We have 5 really qualified people for one spot. Okay, so that's how the visibility of the arts and our program has really grown in that piece. She did coordinate the 1% for the arts, and actually worked as the project lead with the Parks Department and our arts person, and that's a lot of work. In the past, we have not been the whole lead. We've just been dealing with the artist piece. We wrapped more art boxes. We did another 20. She's inventoried them. If you go onto the website, you can see a little bit about the artists. So we've really grown that program And there's been a lot of synergy and connections. She's actually gone out, so a lot of times we'll do grants. We do the grants. They tell us, how good they've done. She actually goes out and sees how they're doing. So those are the pieces that are above and beyond, and the connectivity, and also helps having an artist in that role, because she can connect and relate to the people in the industry.
And you said that you had 5 openings. Was that on the Arts Commission, or one opening, 5 applicants for the Arts
One
Commission?
opening, 5 applicants for that. What number? Which? District 7.
Okay, but it was for the commission. Okay. I hope we can get working artists on the Arts Commission. So I'll put that plug in for that. Great to hear that the part-time employee has had an excellent return, and hopefully we can do more. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hitchin?
Thank you. I'll come back to my question. So that does help. So essentially, we're taking our half-time and making a full-time, partially in anticipation of some additional dollars, but just because we've found some growth. And I look forward to hearing more about how maybe we've tied tourism to art and the grants that can come in, that coordination, because we know, I think we had maybe a glass expo or something that happened at the Glass Museum that was like a national, or maybe so just thinking how we can engage the arts to bring people to our county. We have some really phenomenal art, and then our scenery is really great. So that tie between tourism and art sounds really good. I just was trying to figure out what they would do, so I appreciate the explanation and just want to put a plug in for that coordination, since they're both under your purview.
And we do have a lot of synergy between all our departments. You see them in silos on a piece of paper, but there is a lot of synergy, and they all tie to businesses in those areas. So that's a piece of arts businesses, making sure we're giving them support, helping them grow, helping them expand, or attracting others in.
And if they had extra time working on how do we get youth art out and visible, would be fun. I think
I
a fun
believe
way to-
there's $27,000, I believe, each year in our general fund tied to youth art.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're ready to move on, Madam Director.
So I guess I hopped to the slide twice. So we just, I think, went through that piece of the proposed change for the arts. So my apologies for giving you the same slide twice.
All good?
So the next one is probably where where the meat of our resources are, and where you see a lot of time spent by us. So I'll give kind of a highlight, and then be glad to answer any questions you have. So you'll see there was, for ARPA, for Pierce County Business Accelerator, you'll see you have $6.25 million in the budget. 2.4 is rollover, so that is, we have, as of last night, we've had 349 graduates of the program, and they have certain benefits that they get to take advantage of. So those are all what I call, there's probably a better finance word for it, but I call them committed. So those are resources that we're just waiting for the applicants to use. So that's that piece. So the additional funding for 24-25 would be $3.8 million, and that would do 147 more businesses through the Business Accelerator. If we're able to get the grant from Senator Murray that does the tuition pieces, so we're still in that bucket, that number of benefits will be, we'll actually have more people to be able to go through the program, because the training will then all be done, and the benefits will be through our ARPA resources. So we won't know that till the very end. So right now, we're just saying we have 147 slots if this is approved. And we probably have over 200 applicants still waiting to get in. So there's still a lot of demand for the program.
And remind us what, you'll get to the Community Navigator program soon, and so ask you to juxtapose the program offerings between the two. But just remind us what some of the benefits are of a participant in the Business Accelerator program.
Thank you, sir. So we teach them how to raise capital, so they can raise, they can raise as much capital as they want, but we match a dollar for dollar up to $10,000. So that helps a new company have $20,000 of capital right off the bat and the ability to figure out how to go out and raise those funds. Part of our program pays for Kiva, which helps people do, if they don't want to do friends and family, they could do Kiva, which is kind of a step before you get to Business Impact Northwest or Craft 3, and then the next step up would be a traditional bank. So it helps people get credit ready, and it lets people crowdfund around the world in $25 or $50 to help companies. And we've had a lot of our applicants take advantage of the program, and I can get you numbers on that piece. The other part they get as a rent reimbursement of up to $500, and that's for a year, but they have to pay, and then they send in the reimbursement, and so it's 12 consecutive months of rent reimbursement. So that's about $6,000. And then they get $5,000 of tailored professional services for their company. And we've kept them in buckets that are tied to marketing, that are tied to financial, to the business, the legal, the biggest pain points companies may have. So it may be how they get structured. It may be how do they put together a website? How do they make sure they have their QR codes? How do they, it's just all those areas. And we try to, our coaches work with them, and they each get coaching hours. So that's a benefit that we pay for coaching hours for all of them, and then they get mentorship after that. So there's a lot of stuff in there. So
Good. Great wraparound services, the commercial rent, not their residential rent, commercial
that
rent.
is true. So it has to be commercial rent. So so there are some that don't take advantage of it if for some reason they're out of their home. But if there's so there are some occasions, and I want to say our barbecue. So while he may be out of his home, he has to have a warehouse that he stores all his products in, that maybe does the labeling, some of those. So in some cases, we're able to, when we see the business justification, that warehouse isn't used to store grandma's couch or something in. So those are things that we are able to do, but it is commercial focused.
Makes sense. How you bring together training for new skills, subsidizing rent for a new business, $500 payment, all the other program offerings, help them raise capital. Sounds a lot like a guaranteed basic income program, just in a very targeted context. Councilmember Denson.
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure if you'll have the answers to these questions on hand, but two questions around the financial benefit. Do you have an average financial benefit that is received by these businesses? Like on average, it's $10,000 or? On
average, I believe, and Gary can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe each person going through the Business Accelerator program costs about $27,500, and that's all in if they took advantage of every single thing.
The rent and
the training, the coaching, the professional services. If they maxed out on every single thing, it's about $27,500.
That would be a direct financial benefit, not just their participation in classes, but they would be getting money for rent, this matching fund for capital expenditures.
Right.
That would be
They don't get the training money. We have the training. Yeah.
You
So I
do
just
the
want to make sure
training.
we're all talking. They don't get a check for $27,500. I want to make sure.
That's the
what I mean.
value.
Yeah, that's correct. The value. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was more interested in what they actually get a check for. So the rent stipend, the matching funds for capital, is there a number for that, an average for
We
the
can
businesses?
get you that. So it varies, but we can get you that. And most of them try to take advantage of the full amount. They have to take, so the rent, they've already paid it, so it's a reimbursement. So we have to see their lease. We have to see all those things associated with it. The professional services, they keep their trail of what they paid to the post, because they're going to be audited, what they pay. So if they say, I need this amount from attorney or CPA, they document what they've used that for and how much above and beyond they may have personally paid.
I'm
Yeah,
thinking
but
it's around
one of your
20.
lifelines.
Yeah,
So actually, for the grants alone, the 3 grants, there's $21,000 available.
21. Okay.
So that's the cash value
Yes,
to
sir.
a participant?
Yes.
And then there's added value in
Then
training?
there's 6 weeks of the training, and then the coaching hours and there's the other 6,000 that she mentioned.
Okay, and I had one other question.
Go ahead, Councilmember
David.
Denson, then we're going to get to Vice Chair Campbell.
Okay, out of the total amount of this program, and I guess you can answer it for the amount you had, how much of that was given out in cash to these businesses? Does that make sense?
Well, we could go back and give you, through our reports to you, you'll see how much has gone out from our actual fund. I think I'm hearing you say you want us to break out what we've paid the trainers or any admin through the Chamber of Commerce. Is that what you're asking
Yes, I'm
for?
just interested in how much went out in rent stipends, the capital matching funds, and the
Okay, now
professional
maybe-
services
Oh, do you have-
dollars.
okay.
So right now, as of today, we have $4,065,000 went out between the matching grants, lease reimbursements, and professional services.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
And I believe it's also on Open Pierce County. You could go in and see all the businesses and what they've received.
Okay, thank you.
What was the website to get the,
Yeah, I'm
Open
not sure
Pierce
it's the right
County.
one. Open Pierce County.
Vice Chair Kimball?
Thank you. Gary, you said 21,000 per business is what they're eligible for reimbursement?
Yes, sir. 10,000 matching, 6,000 lease, and then 5,000 professional services.
So how do we get around, or not around, but I mean, we giving money for individual business expenses?
It's ARPA. So ARPA is different than general fund. So when ARPA goes away, we're not able to do that anymore. So this is set up through ARPA, and the way that's set up, we're legally able to do the program.
Because they're ARPA funds and not, okay. If they were out of, is it just general fund? If we had a special reserve fund or anything like that, would that be eligible for, I mean, I'm thinking long-term, what would it need to be like for us to do that?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Director Robinson because I don't know that general fund can be used that way. I think we're trying to figure out sustainability, and are we able to do it out in the private sector through foundations and other ways to keep that sustainable. But Director Robinson, do you have anything to add to that?
I'm Gary Robinson of the Finance Department. What the Director is making reference to is the provision in the state constitution, which is oftentimes referred to as a lending of a credit provision, which precludes allocation of funds directly to a business entity for the purposes that the Director was describing to you. So it's not only general fund of the county, but it would be other resources of a public entity within Washington State.
Pretty much anything that's not ARPA would not actually be eligible for what we're doing with the ARPA funds.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Morell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the innovation of the programs and the thought that goes into them. I know that launching some of these were challenging, but now that you kind of have your legs underneath you, you had said there's 349 that have gone. As Councilmember Campbell can attest to, not everyone is successful. How do you mentor those that hit the proverbial brick wall of running small businesses? Because most small businesses don't last more than 2 years. When you take them from a hobby business into a real world business, now that you have a couple of years, I mean, how is that number looking moving forward? I mean, you know, we want homegrown entrepreneurs to be here to develop companies and to hire folks. What are you seeing beyond your accelerator program that we as a council could support these launched companies help-wise?
That's a great question, and as you both have stated, you're right. There's no guarantees of business success for anyone. We're hoping that because they have a network of the cohort they're in, they have the resources from our instruction team, The chamber is tasked with having a mentor for all of them, and just all of us doing different touch points that we hope we then can catch them when they need to be caught, and then help them pivot to wherever they need to pivot to for success. We know with not just to the accelerator, but in life, there are many people that may want to be an entrepreneur that just may not have it for whatever reason. Could be their time of their life. It could be for a lot of reasons. But we know, since they have the business acumen, they're going to be fabulous employees for someone else. It may be something that they go work somewhere else at a higher level, and then they decide later on to spin back out. We've had there's quite a few serial entrepreneurs in our community, but we're just trying to make sure there's a conversation, a network, and a connectivity. And it's done in ways that are meaningful to them, not what you and I may traditionally use as resources. So it's trying to meet them where they're at and help them through those networks. It kind of does tie in, as Chair Mello said, there's always a little bit of confusion because there is crossover with our navigators, but that's another huge piece of helping support, and the navigators have helped get people into the program. So it's kind of an overlay of areas there, and that's probably an area for the future, having that resource exist for helping the businesses through the navigator system.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So I think we're ready for you to talk a little bit more about the Community Navigator program.
Sure. So the Community Navigator is very similar. It's funds that, because the contracting, we got them all started a little late, and they all hired at different times. So this is carry forward resources for the Community Navigator Fund that we're recommending for your review for 24-25. That's 1.164. And I don't know if you have more questions on that. I believe if I had the number, I don't know if I brought it with me today, they've made over 2,000 visits already, and I don't have it right in front of me. I do have numbers for you that I can get you on their visits and what they've done.
Can you just remind Council the partners we are working with to deliver the Community Navigator program, please?
Sure, and I know that's been a question. So it is the Black Collective. Their fiduciary agent in CARES was the Urban League. It switched during ARPA to Sound Outreach, and they switched to Sound Outreach. One, they were going through leadership change at the Urban League, but they knew ARPA resources, there's a lot of federal pieces, and they also, Sound Outreach works with our Human Services Department, so they wanted to make sure that, because they had never had a staff person before, they wanted to make sure they could hit the ground running with everyone else. So we have the Black Collective, we have Mi Centro, we have Korean Women's Association, we have Asia Pacific Cultural Center, we have PLU, we have Business Impact Northwest, and PTAC. So thank you. And those connection points, they actually have a person based just for Pierce County. So while Business Impact Northwest is a larger organization and PTAC for the state is a larger organization, they actually have someone housed in Pierce County working with Pierce County businesses.
Thank you for explaining that. And all of the 1.164 is out to those community-based organizations.
Correct. So it'd have to be a contract continuation, and it would fund them for 24. The next one we talked earlier about, this is the OA2 limited term duration staff support person for these programs. The next one is the small business safety and security grants, and I know this has just been touched on just a little bit, and we brought it up, I believe, when we did our last presentation, that looking at on the innovation grants, just like we had done during CARES, that it was maybe time to pivot. You know, when you're trying to recruit companies to town, headlines matter, and a lot of the headlines that we have in the paper are tied to crime and security issues, and a lot of our small businesses have a tremendous impact on that security end. So looking at taking the innovation grant concept but twisting it more to just a focus on the public safety area. So I believe you've seen little pieces of that. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have on that. But it just and we also had heard from our someone in the police department, I believe. Let's see, saying, and this is Lauren Wallen. She said that especially the smashing of stolen cars into businesses with the purpose of committing burglary. This used to be something that we'd see maybe once a year. Now it's a weekly occurrence. Cameras are best reactive way for these types of crimes, but unfortunately the proactive is pretty limited, short of installing barricades, rock posts, et cetera, in front of an entrance to the business. So some of these would be, so businesses could take advantage if they wanted to of the glass that you can't get a bullet or a car through, like we've seen Nordstrom had in Seattle. So that's kind of the focus that we're looking at. What I want to do is change the headline so we can recruit companies, so when they do the Pierce County search, they don't get all the not so positive news at the top of the news feed.
We'll have a couple of questions here. We'll start with Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you. And I don't know if I missed any previous briefings on it, but other than what it's been briefly mentioned, I don't know much about this. And so I have a ton of questions, may need to take some offline. Is there a restriction on businesses in Pierce County that are eligible to receive this?
I believe the ordinance as it came forward to you looks just like the current innovation grant ordinance. That's up to council to figure out how that changes. And I believe it's cities and towns, 8,000 population or less, and also unincorporated Pierce County.
Going back to, you don't like the headlines, most of those headlines are coming out of Tacoma, yet we're not going after the problem there. Isn't that a disconnect?
I guess that's a question that you could determine in that process of what's best, for that. I know Tacoma has done some safety programs of windows and a few other things already for their businesses, of which none of our other businesses have taken advantage of. But that's up to council to set what you want the thresholds to be. We just felt like we're trying to emulate very similar to the innovation grants, because it is kind of like an innovation grant, but it's not. It's more proactive to keep your business growing versus the capital seed money to do something unique to grow your business.
What is this is a reimbursement on new expenses, so anything they've spent in the past they can't get reimbursed for. So what is your confidence in that that we'll be able to get these expended? Being ARPA funds, we have time limits on them. We have to be locked in by the end of next year, which means we pretty much have to have a plan from us that's being dispersed by end of third quarter next year. Either know for sure that it's going to go, but if the innovation grants and like I remember with the restaurant one, we put all this money in there, and then when it came down to it, we only used about half of it, so we doubled the benefit. But I don't want to be coming back and doubling benefits or doing all this. I want to know that we get it right the first time. So have we really dialed in with the amount of incidences, with the amount of businesses that have said that they would take advantage of this, to the dollar amounts our businesses, because they've got to. It's not a full reimbursement, at least I think as it reads now. And so you're still asking them to come up with a big capital expense, and we're asking them to do it in a short time period. Are we overreaching with the dollar amount here? We kind of did that with the innovation grants. We often didn't use it all, had to redesign it. Didn't do it all, had to redesign it. I remember it. It was fun and challenging,
Right.
but
I think the innovation grants, well, we thought they'd be such a great idea. We didn't realize all the different obstacles tied to permitting and other things that add to that how long it takes to get it done time. So we feel like the safety grants are a little easier to do, a little easier to get accomplished in that process, so we can have guarantee. I believe on the restaurant one that you had addressed, we actually added more money to the fund. So it wasn't that we didn't get it right. We just decided to give them more to equal out the little guys getting the same amount at least.
we kept shifting is what I mean.
Right.
And so I want to see the data that we have that says this is the right number.
Okay.
that this is the amount that will be used, because I don't want to not use it, because we're asking for a large expenditure upfront by businesses. If it's a $20,000 grant, that means they have to go out at 50%. That means they have to go out and spend $40,000 of their own money before they can get half of it back. They may not have that cash on hand. They may say, yeah, we'd take advantage of it, and then they'd realize that they can't, because they don't have $40K to sit on while we go through a 9-month process of getting a reimbursement to them. So,
Okay, so we'll get you the data for that.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. And I know the legislation is going through the system, but just wondering why not just expand the innovation grants and create something that would allow for businesses to choose if they wanted to create security systems as part of their, I'm going to build my business because I'll be more secure, or I need a new oven and that's how I'm going to build my business, and blend the two. So I'm just wondering why the complete shift away from the innovation grants. I'm just, as an economic development.
We saw, that's a great question, and we kind of wrestled with that ourselves. We saw the innovation hasn't been as popular right now, and a lot of people had taken advantage of it, and we were saying people can't double dip because we're trying to make sure we spread everything out. The other piece that we worried if it was buried underneath there and didn't say safety, that I don't know, I wasn't sure if it could be marketed as safety when that's not the title of the ordinance. So we worried that we didn't want to have any challenges. It feels like all the businesses' safety is, it's a big concern. I mean, it's just kind of everyone's top of mind, both for their employees and for their business. So that was where we came from. Technically, you're correct. Probably all of these could go underneath an innovation grant. It's just people don't think that's innovative. That's proactive protection, I guess. So they don't. It would have to be marketed different, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Herrera.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a really good idea for this business thing. I had a personal example of needing this. When I ran the Veterans of Foreign Wars at the state level, our state headquarters was constantly getting broken into. We had Vietnam veterans, elderly people coming in to file their veteran claims, and while they were in there in the middle of the day, their cars would be bashed in. The employees who worked in the back had their cars that were getting broken into constantly. And I had to make the command decision of taking $25,000 of capital that would normally go and help veterans and up our security, our fences, and things like that, and put gates and fences in front of our windows and all those things. And I could absolutely see other businesses, there's definitely a need. Security, this grant here is something that you need right now. We have businesses that have, when they're stealing the catalytic converters, we've had several instances of small businesses who have their work trucks back there. They cut it off and the truck catches on fire, $1 million worth of tools, a couple people out of work. These are really, really big things. I've talked with Murray's Disposal. Their employees, while they're out doing their jobs, when they come back, their cars are broken into. This is an immediate need, and I can absolutely see businesses taking advantage of it. I agree with Councilman Campbell about really knowing if there's some people out there that will take advantage of it, because we do have a limited amount of time to do this. But I know if I knew about this, we'd take advantage of it. So that would be the key of letting people know that this is out there. It's ready for you. We see the big companies when we go to Costco, when we go to some of these other companies in the parking lots. They have their security things. They got the blue lights going, and that takes a lot of money. But the small businesses may not be able to invest in that without maybe some type of compensation to continue to do business here in Pierce County. So I'm in favor of this, with taking a look at if there's some real needs out there.
And I forgot to say, and this one, we would actually have a strategic partner with the Washington Retail Association. And so when we did innovation grants, it was us and working with our cities and towns. The Washington Retail Association is very interested in this. And so we may have different kinds of partners to help get the word out to secure the usage by the end of the year.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Denson.
Yes, thank you. I absolutely agree that this is a need, and I can kind of see the benefit in terms of a marketing standpoint. It's very clear. I share Councilmember Campbell's concerns about getting the dollars out the door, especially really needing to know who these businesses are, I would say by second quarter, because we have to have them contracted by the end of the year. I also share Councilmember Hitchens' interest, I think, not to put words in her mouth, but I've said it before, about having the innovation program already can include security and safety measures. Those are capital investments that could be included under the innovation program. So I'm interested in seeing the innovation program continue, maybe with a special highlight or special marketing put around the security and safety measures, because that way there would be more flexible uses of funds. I know I've got a lot of businesses. It was hard to get the word out about this program, I think, as it is with any new program. And since I found out about it, and I've been talking to businesses, it's not open right now, but I've got all sorts of businesses.
We've gotten them all taken care of for you.
Thank you so much that we're excited about this. The one thing that I'll highlight is a preschool that's trying to become a child care in a rural area. It's been a nightmare. They need a new furnace. So that's not a security and safety thing, but that's a perfect thing for this innovation program. It's a capital expenditure that would actually bring a needed service to the community, not only jobs, but providing a service for people who are working. So I'm interested in that, and it seems that the main problem with this program, which is a challenge for all programs, is the marketing. So maybe we need to not call it innovation. Maybe we need to call it business strengthening and security. And I'm fine if you want to put security in there, or what was the other word, safety or something to really highlight, but maybe it's more of a marketing thing. But I would really like to continue to see this open to more capital uses, and whatever we can do to help you get the word out, because I think there's a lot of need.
Thank you for your feedback. I will say, of all the programs through CARES and ARPA, this has been the hardest one, and it seemed like it was going to be the easiest one.
Yeah, you would think everybody would be jumping on this.
I thank you for all your feedback.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. We do have a lot of different priorities and needs, and we can't fund everything, and we can't certainly fund everything at the level that is being proposed by either the executive or council members, so we have to make very tough decisions based on priorities. Councilmember Krueger.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not an expert in the costs of putting in security. Was there a reason how you determined 20,000 and 40,000?
We just did very similar to the innovation grant, since that model was out there before you. So that's up to you to determine how you want to do that. Not everyone has done 20,000. So it's up to, so they get a match up to 20,000 from us, so up to 40 for them. Some people may have done $7,000 and they get a check for 3,500. So it's not everyone taking advantage of the top dollar of the program.
So there are a variety of different kinds of security systems that are out there that would be worthy on this. That's where I just was wondering what you get for that amount in a security system.
Well, it depends how many windows they have. I mean, it's not just security system. It's all the things that you can do to. I mean, what did we hear yesterday? At least it wasn't in our county. Someone had a really cool old door, like an old metal door, and they couldn't get in the old metal door. When I say system, I think the whole thing. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
And I believe you already had received from us that there is a carryover. So this $3 million that you're seeing here, there was a carryover. It looks like we have about 1.2 or 1.3 that's not used in innovation grants currently. So that technically that would. So I want to make sure your math is right in that process. That it's. It looks like it's a 1.7 addition, but we're calling it clean because that biennium's done. So just so you, when you're looking at your math, because you're really good at that, I want to make sure we're all good there. Okay.
Councilmember Morell.
Just for my. Thank you. Just for my own information, can businesses, if they applied for an innovation grant and got it, can they apply for the small business safety also?
That's a great question. That's something that would be written in the rules or determined at my level. What we've done in the past is we've tried to say on innovation grants, if they got capital through PCBA, they could not get capital through innovation. So because we're trying to spread it out to everyone. So it would seem the priority should go to companies that have not taken advantage of innovation grants, but that's up to the policymakers to make that decision. We left it vague for you to determine how you want that to happen.
It would, to me, it would just make sense, since they've already been through the process, that if you have a business, I would love to have cameras and other safety items that I could implement on my stores and my business. So, you know, you'd have somewhat of a built-in first crack at this, and then, you know, if you get into a situation, whereas if you can jumpstart it pretty quick through the network you've already established through your innovation grants, I think you could move some equipment, some dollars, and plus some of this will have to be probably subbed out, and you'd have a lot of contractors that would probably love this program. So, but I would like to know if you could do multiple, you know, innovation grant and the safety grant, accept money in both programs.
So we had left it vague for the policymakers to decide on that question, or if you put it back to me for me to decide.
Those are policy choices.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Campbell.
Under the current innovation grants, were they allowed to put in security systems? So all along, some of them may have already put in security systems, and so, but they could have.
They probably could have. I think it might be part of the wording.
Well, innovation leaves it pretty wide open, and so if their need was, so they could have been taking advantage of this all along. If they needed to replace windows with upgraded windows, they could have applied under this. If they wanted to, you know, put bollards out front, would have fit under innovation. If they wanted to install a security camera, would have fit under innovation. Now we're coming in saying we're going to really narrow the scope down, but we expect to move almost more than we moved in the wide open innovation dollars. Because, I mean, we had, what, 1.2 million of 3 million left over. I'm going to wait to see that proof of concept of how we can move $3 million when it's something they could have already done before with the money that was there.
May I address? Director Capistani mentioned earlier, is the marketing aspect of it. The innovation was marketed directly for capital improvements for business growth, not necessarily for the security aspect. So I think this one will address that and market it better. And if we need to co-market it, to do that, that could be a possibility. But I think that was the issue with innovation. It was more for growth and for business support rather than necessarily the security aspect.
Right, but you didn't have people coming and saying, hey, my growth is important, my security is important, will you, I mean, it seems to me if I was looking at growth in my store, but I felt that I needed to upgrade my security system, I'd come to you and say, I really want to add another cash register, but I really need a security system first. Would you support that? And you would have said yes. And so, and one thing I know about entrepreneurs, they're not usually shy about asking for what their need is. And so I want to continue something to support our small businesses. I think narrowing the scope down to try to win some newspaper headlines may not be the way to get there. That we need to continue to provide the need, to ask them what they need. And maybe we go back and add this to the end of innovation. Maybe we go back, and I know a lot of this is our policy decision, so, but if we had $3 million last time and could barely spend half of it, leaving it wide open for whatever they needed, to narrow the scope and expect to move more, I don't think is going to get us the outcomes that we hope for.
Thank you for your feedback.
You know, I'm very supportive of these types of programs. I just think we have some work as policymakers to do, because we're tailoring this so narrow by taking entire swaths of most of our business sectors out of the pool, limiting down what they can use it for, chances are a lot of them have already done these security upgrades. If you felt you needed a security camera for the last 5 years, you bought one. You're not going to wait till, oh, look, now this came out, now I'm going to buy a security camera. You bought one, and we can't reimburse that. So it's going to be hard pressed to find businesses of this size in the narrow geographic scope that are looking to do this specific upgrade over the next 12 months that are sitting on enough capital to front end the process. I don't think there's $6 million worth. I mean, this is $3 million. It's only 50% reimbursement. I don't think there's that much capacity out there. So
Thank you.
We'll move on. We're in budget. Sorry, Chair.
Thank you. Councilmember Morel, we do need to move on. We have a whole nother presentation. We have a very full day. So, Councilmember Morel, briefly, please.
Just to follow up on Councilmember Campbell's comment, can this be retro, or does it have to be front, forward-looking? In other words, if someone did install security equipment within the last 12 months, pulls up a receipt and says, here's my purchase, can they do that using ARPA funds?
That's a great question. I would tell you, I think we could go back to the retro of when innovation was started, if it's along that same line, but I would have to defer to finance to make sure. I know in many cases we've used retro to when you establish the ordinance. So if someone didn't, if we didn't get the marketing out till, let's just say, February, that it would have gone back to November when you passed the ordinance, or December. So we can check on that for you on the retro date.
Okay, if you could check, and also with the innovation also, if that can go retro. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. One last question from me on this, as council continues to think about what the best use of limited resources are. In the program is sent up to us, as designed, as sent up to us for the small business safety and security grant. Do you determine income eligibility, or is anything goes?
We do not determine income eligibility. We have marketed, I believe, we didn't have our major employers. The only thing the major employers could take advantage of was our adaptation grants. None of our programs, I think they've been all 25 employees or less.
Prior to CARE, these were open.
These have been open, but it's been more smaller business. We have not had any big businesses take advantage of this program. That's a great question.
When we're significantly cutting rental assistance and our safe parking program and so many other really basic needs, I get nervous about how we use our limited resources. Appreciate you bringing good ideas for our consideration. As always, we have to make tough choices about limited resources. You have one more item
I
here.
have one more, and this one hopefully you all know about, because this would be the third time we'd be doing it. This is our Young Internship program that we do with Workforce Central. So I think you all know that program, that basically they get attached to businesses. And we've actually tried last time to make sure it was more of our small businesses and trying to have them have partnerships out there. And you saw the record. We brought the information of the success rate of the program. You've heard from both us and Katie Condit at Workforce Central. So that would be another opportunity to do the same program for the third time.
So that we're following, this is a program that this council is quite excited about. This is what we know of as the
Young adult.
Higher Pierce
Yes,
County.
the marketing, see, there you go.
We
The
mar-
marketing name is Higher Pierce County. We know it as the Young Adult Internship Program on our books.
And my understanding, Council, and Councilmember Campbell is very close to this, and so is Mr. Boki, because he did some research for us. My understanding is about 250 young adults for the paid internship program.
Right. I believe that's what we had last time, but I think they only had 196. Do you have that data with you? We can get you we have the data, and actually you have it in our report that we brought to you just 2 months ago. It has the data of everybody used. Right.
We're about 200 young adults when Workforce Central managed this program for us.
Right.
wasn't it a little bit more than $800,000 what they needed to do for that cohort of about 200, or is this the
That
number?
might have been close to $1 million on that one. There was some, that we had a rollover year. So I can make sure Paul has that information.
If you can, and we need a 2-year number, please.
Okay.
I think the council is interested in this for the biennium, and the council is also exploring Puget Sound Taxpayer Accountability Act funds for this purpose, but it's showing up here for at least a portion of this priority, stated priority by the council. Just remind council, we've been discussing making this a priority out of PASTA as well. So we really do need to have a good understanding of what it would cost to replicate the higher Pierce County program for the biennium as we know it. Councilmember Denston.
Yes, thank you. Not a question, just a quick comment that I love this program, and I would love to see or make sure that these funds are also connecting young people to registered apprenticeships, which are, awesome living wage jobs, if that's not already happening.
I think that's our upskill, reskill program, and there may be something tied to age. But let me do some checking for you
If
on those
possible.
pieces. And then also, I did hear earlier when you talked at one of your council meetings about the potential use of PASTA. I wasn't sure in that case because we contract with Workforce Central to do the program. But if someone were to apply to use those funds, wouldn't that be Workforce Central going directly to the PASTA, or would that be us going to? I mean, we can talk offline on that piece. But that was a question that Katie and I both had of what was the best path for resources.
We definitely need to figure that out. Vice Chair Campbell.
And I think reviewing what we had asked for and then the actual use last time is why you actually see more being served for fewer dollars, because what we found, what we needed, and how it actually went out the door was different than what we had guessed before. So that's how we're able to serve more with less dollars, because it's more narrowly focused based upon the experience of the first one.
Thank you. Madam Director, you're clear on that follow-up? Great.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The next slide, I can go pretty fast because I think we have a very strong work ethic, working very closely with all our BIPOC entities. It's pretty much ingrained in everything we do, whether it's from hiring to making sure that we're communicating on policies or how we put programs together. We have a lot of those conversations and work with them both through our navigators, through our Business Accelerator. We've just been truly blessed to be immersed into the culture and try to learn and understand those things. And then also maybe take it to the next level, because a lot of our department's focus is outward focused, and so then working with a lot of our traditional partners that may or may not have had those connections or those ways to leverage, and we've just seen a lot of success in that. So I feel like all of our answers that we try really hard, and whether it be boards and commissions, that's just an area that we are pretty passionate about. The very last, I think we have maybe two more quick slides. You asked on budget reduction. So our budget reduction from the general fund, you'll see them listed into these two areas over the 2 years. It's approximately $96,000, of which $30,000 is in the key industry area and $66,000 is in professional services. And then next slide. Items that we still have on our docket from 2022-23. One of them that we're passionate about, but we have not been able to make 100% connection, is the Parkland Spanaway funding. What we have done on that area, the top business concerns are safety, lighting, and crime, and none of those are in our purview. But we've been trying to figure out, because those are done by other departments, and I know you've just done a lighting program there. But what we've done is try to figure out if there's ways that we can augment other programs, and so some of those are aligning up better in the 24-25, and usually in like in the 1% for the arts. The three programs we're talking about are all in the Parkland Spanaway area. So trying to figure out other funds that we have and how we leverage those. We still have some challenges with the small lot, and there's a gap for development, but we're starting to see more things actually down in the Spanaway area of redevelopment happening on those pieces. And The other thing that we wanted to focus on, our navigators, 140 of the businesses they've talked to are in the Parkland Spanaway zip code area, so trying to make sure we're doing outreach there and figuring out what are their needs and how do we connect them. In addition to, we've had about 30 of the businesses take advantage of business innovation grants. So that's an area that's been a little harder for us to figure out how you take 100,000, make sure it's used wisely, and we've had Pierce Transit change. We're trying to figure out, okay, how do we augment and not duplicate, whether it's with transportation infrastructure, how it connects to the neighborhoods, and if there's so that's been a harder area. And Blue Zones is going on there, so there's a lot of activity. We just want to make sure whatever we do that does business attraction or retention growth is value add. The other one, something I think we talked at the very beginning when the program was set up, was the agricultural program for individual businesses. Since this is through the general fund, we have not been able to figure out how we could do that program. I guess the plus side is at this moment we haven't had a need, but so trying to figure out if there's something in general. So like during CARES, we had PPE for business. So it wasn't just your business or your business. So I wasn't picking a business that got the PPE. They all could take advantage of it. So we're trying to figure out, not knowing what could be the next step, but we can't figure out how to get around that. There could be something working maybe with farm bureaus. There may be a different path, but we have not found out how we could do a program, a grant program that basically lets individual businesses take advantage of it because it's using general fund, not ARPA monies. I believe that's all my slides.
Any other questions for Director Capistani before we move on to the next presentation this morning before lunch? Councilmember Morell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Closing question for me is, has any sectors of the economy been left out that we haven't touched on that we could help? And you can get back to me later on that, but.
Right. I don't think any sector's been left out. I think sectors are starting to change with interest rates. So while we've seen a lot of growth through the construction sector, and especially in the home building, which ties to the affordable housing pieces, we're seeing many of them can't get so they're pulling back on some of those. But I don't think any of our programs have left out any particular sector.
Okay.
If you know of one, please let me know.
Maybe offline we can have a discussion moving forward, being future-minded. Is there anything that we could help patch for the next biennial 2 years? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to echo Councilmember Denson's comments around childcare and workforce. I know as we came out of the pandemic, and whatever that looks like, we're still kind of in it, but that we have a lot of women that continue to not return to work, and even some men who are caring for young ones who can't find childcare, so they end up choosing. And so I'm really, as an economic question, asking our economic department to really look at how is the fact that Pierce County does not have enough daycare impacting our economy. And that's something I'm going to be working with staff to figure out how we can actually put that in your budget to really focus on that, because when we talk about communities that put childcare in their businesses as like incentivizing business to come and yes, we're going to help you zone this and make it work. How do we make child-friendly businesses, infant-friendly offices, anything where we can bring the family in or support the family, because when you go to work, your family's with you, whether they're on your person or in your heart. And so knowing how we make that a healthy work environment will help us, just at the county level, help us retain, but as an economy, it will make people want to come here and work here and put their business here. So I think the more we can be forward thinking about that, I think we will benefit long term. So
I think
just
that's a-
know I'm going to kind of
Right,
push on that.
I think it's a good question. I'm wondering, too, if some of our strategic partners might be schools, because we're seeing in the demographic bubbles that a lot of the elementary schools, we're starting to see all those move down in usage. So I'm wondering if some strategic alignment or partnership could be done with our school districts on spaces my daycare was at a school, that maybe that was that's something we could be creative about, because they're all trying to figure out their use of space, and it's not being used in some cases. I'm not saying every school district, but we're seeing that bubble and that trend go through, so that could be an alignment that we can look at.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councilor McCruver.
Thank you, Chair. And in line with that, I just would ask to look back at what the rules and regulations have changed over the past decade or two, because I know that when the state got very involved in child care is when they started going away. The rules and regulations were putting the small businesses out of business. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, Director Capistani, thank you again for bringing us good ideas to mull over and to be able to discuss your biennial budget for the next biennium. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's move right into the Department of Emergency Management. We need to get through the Department of Emergency Management before we recess for lunch. So I'm going to invite up the director of our Emergency Management Department, Jody Ferguson. Welcome. Excuse me. My apologies. Mr. Boki to help orient us.
Thank you, Chair Mello. The Department of Emergency Management is under the Public Safety tab in your budget book. There are actually two major funds, and then there's a number of other funds that they're responsible for. But the two major funds are Emergency Management, which is in the General Fund and begins on page 10 of Section 7 in the Public Safety tab, and the Emergency Management Grant Fund, which is immediately after that on page 13. There's also a number of other funds that they're responsible for, and that they can speak to that. They also have, in both the general fund decision packet, they have an item, and they also have several items in the non-general fund decision packet under emergency management grants. I'm not sure, I don't believe that they have anything in ARPA, but that will be discussed, I'm sure.
Thank you. Director Ferguson, good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, council members. Jody Ferguson, Director of Emergency Management, and with me today I have Deputy Director Amy Gillespie and our Finance Manager Ellen Link. To start off, I want to go way, way back. In 1990, when I started my career with Pierce County, emergency management is where the earthquake people lived. So I think you'll see on the first slide that in 33 years since, our department has grown into a very sophisticated department that operates in a very complex environment. In fact, in the 90s, I probably would have said we only fit into the public safety priority, but I come to you today and tell you that we impact every box you see on the screen. And I'm very, very proud of that. When it comes to housing affordability, we help support those who are unhoused. We work with infrastructure needs. Right now in our current EOC activation, we have a critical infrastructure branch that is looking at the safety in our community. Even youth and young adults, we have recently started a partnership with the Pierce County Skills Center where we are taking our emergency management professionals, our radio communications professionals, and our fire marshals, and we're trying to get to our youth to get them involved in what we think are really exciting jobs that they may not navigate to naturally in a college environment. So we are very pleased, and of course, economy and workforce, I have the distinct pleasure of working with Director Capistani on a variety of different endeavors, and we did so during COVID, and that was so much fun that we found that continuing to partner with them is a great idea. So I'm very proud we're touching all the priorities that you have outlined. In looking at our org chart, we are 56 employees strong, and we are not just the earthquake people. We have a very robust emergency management division, but you will also see that we have radio communications division, and I'll go into their responsibilities in a moment. The Fire Marshal's Office and Fire Prevention Bureau are also under the umbrella of emergency management, as is the Washington Task Force 1, which is one of FEMA's urban search and rescue teams. They have 28 of these teams across the country, and we have the pleasure of hosting one of those. So on the next slide, looking at our functional areas, obviously emergency management, there are a lot of words on the screen, but our mantra is we help people and solve problems. And candidly, we don't care what the topic is. And I think that's why we have grown into such a sophisticated organization, because we don't say no. One of our mantras in the office is, how can we get to yes? And I think we've demonstrated our ability to do that. We've gotten very creative and have solved a lot of problems. Our role is unique in that we are the county. We serve all. We serve county departments. We serve our cities. We serve our public service districts. We serve special purpose districts. And ultimately, we partner with the residents of this county to make sure that this is a safe place to live. So our work, there's always an abundance of it. With that mindset, we're very, very busy. So with fire prevention, obviously the focus, again, is safety, and it's looking at the application of the fire code through plan review, through inspections of facilities. It happens through investigations, arson investigations, looking for cause and origin of fires. We have, with our new Fire Marshal, Ken Rice, we have really taken advantage of some things that we've seen in the community where fires were happening and really turning those into educational moments for our community. So going out and inviting the media out and saying, this is why this fire happened. This could have been easily prevented. So we're taking a lot of opportunity to keep our public safe through our Fire Marshal's Office. And two, they've gotten so creative. I think we've really developed a better partnership with our residents and our business owners by streamlining a lot of the processes when it comes to permitting. There are things that can be fast-tracked. We started a no-cost food truck inspection program that I know is greatly appreciated, and I'm very proud that the fire prevention team will be getting a standing ovation award at the employee celebration coming up next week. So they're really looking at innovative ways to really partner with the community and keep them safe at the same time. So radio communications, I think we think of, these are folks that are sitting at their desks with little radios waiting for something to happen. But it's far more complex than that. The county operates in partnership with the City of Tacoma and City of Puyallup. It's a single radio network, emergency radio network. It consists of 700 megahertz bands and 800 megahertz bands. We call it a three-legged stool because one cannot operate without the other. So the City of Tacoma is responsible for the 800 megahertz portion, which is City of Tacoma-centric in the urban area. The City of Puyallup has a subsystem to that is critical as we start to spread out amongst the county. And then for the county, we operate the 700 megahertz branch of the system, which really serves all of the county and reaches into our most rural areas. So together, we own and operate the infrastructure. So we don't contract with an entity and sit back and wait for problem solving. We have, for example, 21 tower sites throughout the county that covers more than 1,800 square miles. So this is a huge area, and we have an extremely talented group of technicians that their responsibility is they keep that infrastructure running so that when we call 911 and need help, we know those firefighters, those officers, those EMS providers, everyone can talk to one another and get help to where it needs to go quickly. In addition to operating, I guess a good way to think of it is we're a service provider just like you subscribe to a Verizon or an AT&T. We are the provider for emergency public safety radio. So all of our customers subscribe to these systems to be able to operate it. It's based on, I'm sure we'll get into this in a moment, but there's a total cost of doing business to operate and maintain that infrastructure. And the rates that we charge are really, you divide that total cost by the number of subscribers in the system, and that's what gives us our rate. In addition to maintaining the infrastructure for the radio system, we also have technicians that are installing public safety equipment into all the responder vehicles. They certify that radar is working correctly. They just have a variety of different things that they are doing. And in addition, while the radios themselves are the responsibility of our customers, we did make a concerted effort in the last budget cycle to really make sure that our staff were certified to be able to problem solve and take care of issues without having to contract for those services. So with that investment in our own staff, we were able to actually eliminate about $500,000 worth of contracts that we can now do the work ourselves because we made an investment in our own people. So I'm very excited about that. In addition to radio communications, probably the entity that gets the most attention because they have search dogs, and everybody loves the search dogs. Washington Task Force 1, again, is one of FEMA's 28 urban search and rescue teams. And while you probably saw in the org chart, there's just a few people on the program staff, this is actually a team of more than 200 members that come from 3 jurisdictions and more than 28 different agencies. This doesn't even include the individuals that we work with. When the team deploys, we have doctors, engineers, and the canine search teams that emergency management is responsible for as part of this team. We have to be in a constant state of readiness, and should the bell ring, we have to be ready to be out the door within 4 hours. So you can imagine with all of these people, the largest team we send out the door at any one time is 80 people. So they can come from throughout Washington State to get to our facility to get out the door in 4 hours. It's an immense task. The most recent deployment was the fires in Hawaii, and the team just did an amazing job. So very, very proud of them. Next slide. As was mentioned, when you saw our organizational chart, we have 56 total FTEs. Now, our FTEs, the way we organize them, they don't necessarily align with funds. Emergency management's a great example because there are some that are general fund and some that are grant funded. So there's just kind of this strange overlap. So we've shown you here, even though, for example, there are 12 FTEs in grants, those are really emergency management people. Okay, next slide. Critical needs and challenges, I can only pick 3. There are a lot. It's emergency management, it's not just locally, but nationwide is having an identity crisis right now. There are those like me who embrace that, and I want to do everything and solve everybody's problems, or at least try to. But in some parts of our country, it's no, you're putting too much on our plate. While we welcome those new things to our plate, we do have some challenges as we look at really reaching out. It's not just reaching out. We're service oriented, so we like service delivery. How do we provide services to our most at risk and vulnerable populations? We've had the great benefit for so long, we're due to climate change, we're having these climate extremes, and that's really pushing us to, hey, there are some populations out there who are unhoused. We really need to support them. Again, 30 years ago, this isn't work we were necessarily doing. So it's really important to us. We were trying to learn, and we were doing some things that we traditionally do. You know, we open warming shelters, and we get people on a bus to go there. That doesn't work. That was us sitting in a room and planning for a group of people. So we stopped, brought in stakeholders, partnered with the Coalition to End Homelessness, and we planned together. And now we even respond together. So whenever we're activated for weather extremes, you will see the Coalition to End Homelessness within our EOC working hand in hand with our staff. It does create the challenge that I don't necessarily have the resources to be able to fund the things that do work. As an example, one of our most successful, we realized we need to go where people are, not to try to move people around. So in one of our lovely snowstorms where we had at least a foot of snow, one of the things we did was with some of our other resources, we were able to go to some of our communities that were most vulnerable, and wasn't necessarily pretty, but we could set up some really tough tents and provide heat and provide some food and water and be able to do that. And people came because we went to them. So those are some of the lessons that we learn, and it's really critical if we're going to keep doing this work that we continue that effort and really identify those things that will make a difference, not that are convenient for government to do. Disaster recovery is another challenge. I will say the jaded side of me will come out and say, you know, a disaster happens and people expect government to show up on their doorstep within a half hour with a check for $500, a bottle of water, a plate of food. That doesn't happen. So preparedness is really key. But there are opportunities in disaster recovery. So I think if you look at, there's so many times people think, oh, we're going to get a disaster declaration and FEMA will make us whole. It doesn't work like that. As a county, we have to reach dollar thresholds to even be eligible for federal assistance. As individuals, that's even tougher because there are requirements regarding insurance. There are certain thresholds, you know, number of homes that are damaged that make individual assistance available, and even then, it is never enough. And a majority of our EOC activations never ever reach the level that would allow us to get federal aid. And oftentimes when it does come, it comes in the form of a low interest loan. And if you've lost your house and you already have a mortgage you're paying on, probably the last thing you're interested in is yet another loan to take care of the problem. We've done some innovative things. The most recent King Tide event that we had that really impacted some of our shoreline communities, that wasn't a disaster that allowed us to go after any federal assistance. But Deputy Director Gillespie and Finance Manager Link are very creative, and they knew that there was a pilot program that the state had begun for individual assistance that had some of those barriers removed. So they quickly went into action, and we were able to secure funding for very vulnerable individuals and business owners and homeowners who never would have gotten support from their insurance or lack thereof, or never would have gotten support from FEMA, but we were able to get them funds to repair their homes and repair their businesses. So that was great for us. We even had a couple, they were both in their mid-80s, and they showed up at our office and just wanted to come in and meet everybody and thank them because we had, again, we went to them, We helped navigate the program for them, and we were able to get those recovery funds in their hands really quickly. But it's an ongoing challenge because we are having more and more disasters that are exponentially more devastating, it seems, and much more expensive. So this is becoming far too common in our world. Engagement. This is, I alluded to this before, another challenge for us, even though it appears we are a well-sized department with a lot of staff, with the scope of who we engage with, it's still a challenge to keep up. You know, we have planners, we have those who are doing operations, we have 2 education staff. This is a huge county to try to cover with 2 education staff. So they do an amazing amount of work, but when you're partnering with, you have a K-12 and higher ed work group, you have a group that's working with hospitals, you have a group that's even working with the smallest water districts and purveyors in our county. That is, sustaining that at a high level can definitely be a challenge. Okay, next slide. Our department priorities, obviously, I have far more than this. But one of the things, kind of the framework of who we are and what we do revolves around plans. And it's not that we can anticipate every single little tactical step we have to take, but as time changes and things change, we need to keep those plans updated. Well, we don't just open a plan, go in, do a find and replace for the dates and call it good. This is a complete re-engagement with all of those partners I mentioned. Because again, we plan with, not for. Which is another reason we don't contract out for those services, because the value is the process of sitting down with people and understanding what is really going to work for their community. The second is training and outreach. If any of you have been at our facility, it's a training hub nearly every day when we're not activated. We've been doing more of that lately, but you will see all agencies, all levels of government constantly in our facility for training. We have been able to provide, I think, just some stellar opportunities, bringing in national experts and world-renowned experts in Homeland Security that have come to Pierce County to provide top-notch training to county staff, to responders around the region. So we're very proud of that, and I think we've, and we really like to take those experts and dive into a case study. What happened in I'll give an example. Donnell Harvin is he's a regular on CNN and MSNBC as an expert on counterterrorism. He came to Pierce County. He's a friend of ours, and he can talk to us about we're planning for this high-profile trial. What are some things you've seen around the world that could be helpful to us? So we've got that level of expertise and really diving into specific case studies so we can take tangible things out and apply them, not just speaking in generalities. So we want to continue that. Emergency radio communications, we are very close. We just received a design proposal for even though it operates as a single network, really truly turning our network into a single radio system. That design work is just completing, and we're very excited about that. And this has never been done anywhere in the country. So the county and the city of Tacoma and city of Puyallup are breaking ground that no one else has done before. It was so new that even the company we worked with on the design, they didn't require any funding because this was something new for them as well. So they took on this design role. just because it was new and exciting and something they could extend to other customers. And then finally, strategic engagement. As I mentioned, our operating environment has become far more sophisticated and complex than it was 30-plus years ago. And I have the pleasure of serving on a 30-member council that advises the FEMA administrator. So I get to have a little baby crystal ball. And I can see where, our last session with the administrator, it's really looking at these things and is supporting the unhoused, looking at opioid epidemics, looking at wildland fire urban interface, looking at all of these things, and of course climate change and resilience. This is where FEMA is headed. So for us to really have someone who can focus on what are new funding opportunities, how can we jump in and research how a particular process works so we can get engaged in that. That's something where we are lacking right now. Even with my involvement, I can't solely dedicate my time to doing that. So that is something, and you will see addressed in one of our decision packages, is that strategic engagement will help keep Pierce County at the leading edge, and I think also give us a strategic jump into where emergency management is going and the services we can provide for all of our customers. Next. All right, decision packages. So the first, perfect segue, one of the decision packages that we did submit was adding an emergency management program analyst to our staff. This would be a high-level, management-level position that would do those things I just described. It's really looking into, I think you all remember when we were in the middle of our COVID response, and there were new and great opportunities coming out of the federal government, coming probably faster than all of us could handle. And we were able to pull some staff together to really research and understand how processes worked, but it wasn't anything that we could sustain for any amount of time. So this position is very critical, and especially, I will say for emergency management, everything we do for the most vulnerable in our community, because if it works for them, it works for everybody. So really making sure that we are focused on how do we best serve the underserved. This will also be a component of that work. In addition, you will see 2 Emergency Management Coordinator 1 positions. And these were grant funded and were actually included in the applications that you all approved. And we have received an award for one of those grants, and now that the restrictions have been lifted on the federal government level, we should be receiving funding for the other anytime. So 2 grant funded positions and 1 program analyst.
Let's pause there. Questions about the decision packages on this page? Again, I think we heard the bottom 2 positions are grant funded, fully reimbursable, no
Yes, sir.
impact to the general fund. The new program analyst is a general fund request.
Yes, sir.
Let's see any other questions. Please proceed.
Okay. So proposed FTE changes, again, following a similar level. So we in emergency management, in addition to all of the new adventures that we get to enjoy, one of the things that has happened is the grant programs that we have relied on for years and years are dwindling. As an example, I'll pick one grant, the Urban Area Security Initiative, which was established right after 9/11, used to bring about $11 million just to Pierce County. We now share about $260,000 that we share amongst all of our partners in Pierce County. So you can see how those grants, as they have dwindled and it's one of those charts that just doesn't work out. The funding dwindles and our responsibilities are increasing. So we're getting squeezed. So that is difficult. And this follows suit with not just the Urban Area Security Initiative, but state Homeland Security grants. The emergency management performance grants are more reliable, but they are not administered in a consistent way from state to state. In our state, they are distributed kind of on a per capita basis, but depending on what jurisdictions have programs, that peanut butter gets spread very, very thin. So grant funding is going down. Increased competition for general fund never helps. But some adjustments that we have made is you will see a 3-position reduction. Anticipating these cuts in grant funding, we were able to strategize. So a couple of positions were vacant, so it wouldn't hurt quite as bad. And then the 3rd position has migrated to the Sheriff's Department. It was a grant for an intelligence analyst that better lives in the Sheriff's Department. You will see a change to the elimination of the Assistant Fire Marshal position. It is vacant as well. And that was to ensure that we met the requested reduction. But minimal impact for now. Any additional cuts obviously would require cuts in service delivery. And then, of course, adding the program analyst position that I already mentioned. So those are the proposed FTE changes.
I'm going to ask you to pause there. Councilmember Denson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director Ferguson, for all of your efforts during COVID. You guys have got to still be exhausted from that, and I know that was a big lift. All your preparation work for Cascadia, other earthquakes, more wildfires, the heat and cold events we're experiencing. We need you all more and more, and I've enjoyed the tour. It was amazing. Also appreciate your focus on the unhoused population, and you're so right. And your willingness to learn lessons, because you're right. Sometimes we do what we think works, and we know with unhoused people, especially living on the streets, they're not leaving their stuff.
Right.
So going to where they are, that's really awesome. I also appreciate how solution-oriented you are, and I cannot say enough good things about Fire Marshal Rice. He is amazing, and he definitely is just great to work with. Our community has found that. I had a question about the single system. You mentioned that we have a single network, and we're moving towards a single system. Can you explain the difference between those, what that's going to look like? Also, I'm on the South Sound 911 board, as you know. We were expecting information on that in October. I understand you have the design. When can we expect to see what it's going to be and have a cost? If you could address those things, that'd be great.
Sure. Okay, let's see if I am so not technical. So I'm going to give you the Jody version of how the single system works. So basically, with these 3 branches of the network, they're all, for lack of a better example, they're all plugged into one another. So they work consistently, but it may require that if someone were responding from Key Peninsula to, I'll pick your end of the county, to Eatonville, they might have to just click a dial on their radio. Okay, so that's a real simplified version of how that works. But everything is plugged together and it works seamlessly. What a single system would do, so what we did is the radio system owners sat down with all of our customers. So the dispatchers, law enforcement, fire, and we said, okay, what is it you need? What are your operational requirements? So we were able, and I didn't bring those today, but I can get those to you. So basically, there was all of the responders in the region identified 13 functional outcomes that they wanted to see in a radio system. Now, some of these things we were able to address without having a single system. So that was the great news. But with a single system, instead of being, they're still plugged into one another, but it's essentially one unit. But what has to happen, I always tell people, you don't go into the Motorola store and go to the shelf and where it says single system and buy the box and take it home and plug it in. So in addition to design work that Motorola had to do, we have to look at a variety of other things as owners. Are our towers in the right spots? Do we have agreements in place to make sure that happens? If we moved this tower to this location, could it provide better coverage in areas where there are some identified gaps? So it's really been a painstaking process of looking at all areas of the county, going out to the farthest reaches and the highest hills to ensure that the design specifics that are put together actually create the enhancements that we desire and the functional outcomes that we want. So essentially, to the users, is it going to operate that differently? No, they just may not have to click that button on their phone or on their radio. But essentially, it becomes one system, and the goal is to ensure that rather than having our customers subscribe to one or the other, it becomes a single unit with a single rate. We've already operated under a single point of contact because we've partnered our teams with City of Tacoma, so any troubleshooting or support is done in a complementary way. But it just, it creates a true single system. So for our customers, there will be some benefits business-wise, and hopefully with the enhancements, of course, building and moving towers and doing those things, it's a very complicated process. But if we can create better coverage for Councilmember Morell's district up in the mountains where there can be gaps, we like to be able to take advantage to be able to do that to ensure better coverage. It will never be perfect in our area because of the terrain. We could never afford the amount of towers that would be required to have a completely seamless system. It just doesn't exist. But the single system could, we'll see if the enhancements equate to what the bill will end up being. And I think you can, in November, we will be able to at least give the South Sound 911 Board and all of you a ballpark or a range of the costs we're looking at. And keeping in mind the cost of creating this new single system is separate than, what are the ongoing, there's the ongoing maintenance and what is the total cost of ownership. So in the coming weeks, because this is so complex and it's never been done before, we love deadlines and we've been really pushy, but we've had to extend things out a couple of weeks. But it's coming very soon.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. You mentioned ongoing costs, and I'm not going to ask you to get into the weeds because there's so much on both sides of this. But I would imagine going to a single system, moving more towards the single point of contact, there's some efficiencies with radio shops and technicians and things like having two different consoles at call taker and dispatcher's desks at South Sound 911 because they're dealing with two different megahertz systems. Things like that could be some cost savings.
Well, I like to be optimistic, but I wouldn't necessarily go there because new technology doesn't necessarily get less expensive. So you may not see, while there may be a single rate, it actually may be more expensive. I'm completely speculating right now, but when you have the additional cost of towers, because we have operating as a 3-branch network, we've already done all of those things on the business end. So we share We share contracts with the city of Tacoma and Puyallup. We do maintenance with them. So those savings have already been realized, which is super exciting. So it remains to be seen once we do the analysis of it'll cost so much to implement the work itself, but those ongoing costs, it's really too early to tell. But I want to be cautious about assuming that it will be cheaper.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Chair, I have two other questions, and they're budget related. Can I go ahead and ask those now? They're not related to staff, but I don't really see anywhere else in the PowerPoint to ask them. I'll ask the easy one first. Emergency management grants on page 14, section 7. I know I've got constituents in my district, Councilmember Krueger does as well, that are very active volunteers. Citizen Corps is the overall umbrella organization. They're not asking for a lot, but they've come to me a couple times asking for funding so that they can run CERT classes, and I know our fire districts typically partner. Can you just explain why there's nothing in there for our volunteer groups?
Happy to. One of the things that has happened is traditionally those programs have been funded by state Homeland Security grants. So again, as those funds have dwindled, we too have a governing body made up of regional representatives, police, fire, public health, medical, public works, critical infrastructure, you name it. So this body really decides how those grants are spent in the region. So just like you have to make awful decisions about the county budget, that group has to make awful decisions about the $260,000 is divvied up when police need equipment, fire needs training, you know what I mean? So it's a variety of competing priorities. So just as that money dwindled, that Regional Coordination Council just decided they could no longer fund this.
Okay.
That doesn't mean we don't try to go out and look under every sofa cushion we can to assist with that. But that is why there's no funding available. And as I mentioned, I have 2 staff who are dedicated to education throughout the county, and this is a very large county. So what they do within the hours that they have, they provide CERT training, what we call Pierce County Neighborhood Emergency Teams, Map Your Neighborhood. They provide all of the programs, depending on what any neighborhood wants. They're able to tailor that, but with 2 staff and a lot of demand, we can only go so far. So we are very good at some of the new opportunities we want to look at that we haven't tapped into before are partnerships with the insurance industry, who often make community grants available, whether we can do that on a group's behalf or Citizen Corps can as well. They are a 501c3, so we try to link up. If there are foundational kind of investments that can be made, we can hook them up with Citizen Corps directly. But we've made it a priority with the limited staff that we have to provide those services where we can, and we just keep looking for money wherever we can.
Okay, appreciate that answer. Thank you. And then the tougher question is, council has received a couple letters, one from the South Sound 911 Board and one from the Pierce County Fire Chiefs Association, challenging the diversion of $4.4 million in funds from the Proposition 1 sales and use tax. I know you know this, but just reminding council members in case we've got a lot in our inbox. So the interlocal fund agreement, the latest version signed in 2022, requires written agreement between the county and the South Sound 911 Board for any use of these funds above and beyond bond payments. And I know that you went to the board earlier this year with a request for $3.6 million, 1.8 per year, and they specifically said no. So you can understand their frustration that this is showing up in the budget, similar to what happened 2 years ago. So I was hoping you could respond to why that's in the budget.
Oh, I would be happy to. Number one, I followed the same process that was done last year. So let me back up and kind of paint a picture for you first. The 0.1% sales tax was passed after a very sad time in Pierce County where we lost a number of our emergency responders. And part of that, and we take this very personally in DEM, because it was just a horrible time. And one of the things we realized specifically is that the county was operating on a radio system that was basically archaic. So there was an opportunity to go to the residents of this county and say, hey, we need your help. You know, we need this 0.1% to ensure that there's two things. Number one, we have a robust center that can answer the public's call for help, which is South Sound 911. The other half of that was, let's have a radio system that keeps these responders safe. So the agreement for the use of those funds was to do those two things. And those two things are very much tied together, but those are, you know, having different entities. South Sound 911's core mission is to answer 911 calls and dispatch police and fire. The City of Tacoma, the county, and Puyallup's core mission is to provide a robust emergency communication system. Even that the measure passed, thank goodness, but even then, funds were not invested. The radio side of those funds were invested at the time into buying radios for all of our responders, which typically are the responsibility of those entities. A small portion was dedicated to the upgrade of, I would say it's chewing gum and duct tape and baling twine. The system, we were going to build a state-of-the-art 700 megahertz system, and that was done with far more than radio sales tax money. We partnered with, again, the city, and we used port security grants. We used Homeland Security, any and every grant that was available for radio communications, we used and built this system. And we built it with, it was a opportunity that was just great because Pierce Transit, we were able to, while our neighbors were having systems that had a price tag of, you know, $273 million, our partners at Pierce Transit needed enhancements to their system at the same time, and they owned some stuff and we owned some stuff, so together we were able to pool our assets and utilize grant funds to really build out the system for about $56 million, I believe, right? Ish?
That's total value.
Total.
About 28 million.
Okay. So anyway, so as this went along, one of the agreements that was made by people who preceded all of us was that the sales tax money would be used. They said that no customer's rate should be more than $30.50 per unit per month. So to do that, the problem with that approach was no one considered that total cost of ownership that I mentioned. It was just a rate that was pulled out of the air. To reach that rate, we had to utilize at the time a variety of different funds. So that is when we pulled some from the 911 fund, we pulled some from other places, and South Sound 911 agreed at the time, I don't remember what the dollar amount it was well over $1 million was given to the City of Tacoma and the county to keep the rates at that level. That was honored for some time, and then the amount went from $1 million each to $560,000 each. And then during COVID, even though there was a contract in place, the funds went to zero. I absorbed as much of that as I could, but unfortunately I had to slightly raise rates, which impacted some of the agencies in the rural parts of Pierce County who frankly couldn't afford higher rates. So I did everything I could. In the last budget biennium, we were able to, again, go to South Sound 911, who is in charge of the county fund. They said, I said, hey, at one point $3.5 million will keep us closer to a $40 range, and everybody in the county will pay the same rate, whether they're on 700 or 800. So that worked. And then, in the meantime, sorry, I know this is a long story. In the meantime, those bonds for the initial radio purchase matured. So that meant every year there was an additional $5.7 million available, in addition to the $24 million that South Sound 911 already has in reserve. So I thought, candidly, to benefit our outlying communities, our Key Peninsulas, our Roys, our Greenwaters, I thought since so much is now available, I would love to ask for $1.8 million a year to get those rates back down to that $30 level. Because for the city of Roy, it could be the difference of, do I use the radio system or do I put tires on our responder vehicles? I mean, it gets that sensitive. So all of that kind of paints where we are today. And actually, I never got to go to the board or the finance committee, but the public safety committee, which was made up solely of 800 customers, decided my request was not feasible. So I was never able to go any further with that. The problem is our budget processes didn't align. So all of my material was already submitted before those decisions were made by the board. And that's what happened in the last cycle too. It's just that it wasn't any ill intent on my part, I promise you that, but it's just the schedules did not work out.
Okay, well, that last bit in particular helps a lot, because with the interlocal funding agreement, that 4.4 cannot go to the county because it belongs to South Sound 911. So, and that's my intention. And it's not about what's a worthy use or a not worthy use. It's about whose money this belongs to.
Oh, of course, and candidly, what I bring to you all is there's a total cost of the system. I don't care who pays for it. Agencies can go to South Sound 911 and get the funding if they would like, but there is a cost. And but we will be faced with the prospect of, if the outlying agencies have to pay a higher rate because the radio investment that the voters intended is not used, they could choose not to pay. Then does the county cut off their radio access?
Yeah, there's
So
a
those
lot
are
of
the really
questions.
tough decisions we have to make.
Yeah, and there is a lot to this, and I won't go into my
Well, I
understanding.
love talking about it. I'm happy to.
I don't want to go into details about what South Sound 911's board decided, but it was after consultation with the police and fire chiefs, which were
That we're only
supportive.
on the 800 system. None of them were customers of the county. There's documentation for that.
Okay.
I'm
well,
happy to provide it.
I've never heard that, so I will definitely follow up on that. But from what I have heard from the chiefs on both systems, is it's just a little bit of justification. Not that they need it, because it's their decision, but it's an issue of fairness, and it's also a real interest in keeping some money for the single system, because in particular, last year, their decision to partner with the county with the 1.3 million was kind of like, this is it. This is the last time. We know we're working on a single system. We want everyone to get to the same rate. Eventually, we're subsidizing it one more time. But apparently, they reached their limit this time and said, if the county wants to subsidize their users, that's fine, but that's not appropriate for South Sound 911 because it's not fair to the 800 users, not fair to Tacoma and Puyallup.
Well, and there's a great solution for that as well, since South Sound 911 has $24 million in reserve. The new funding that's available, thanks to the radio bonds being matured, would actually make it so none of our customers, city or county, would have to pay any rates. So there's a great solution out there to utilize existing funding without having to dip into money for the single system.
Yeah, if that's how they decided to use their money. And again, they're not in the radio business. The county, Tacoma, and Puyallup are. The South Sound 911 has been subsidizing
That's
it.
the important part of it. They are not in the radio business.
and they don't have a seat at the table.
Oh, they do. Our project team, South Sound 911, has 2 members on it, as well as the regional steering group, which they staff not only with their leadership, but with all of the dispatchers, so they can help us design what the system looks like.
That's really helpful because our dispatchers and call takers are really at the heart of this. Okay, thank you. And I appreciate the information about the budgets not aligning, because that makes this a lot easier for us in terms of that $4.4 million. We certainly don't want to be doing anything in breach of the interlocal funding agreement.
Of course not.
I'm going to ask Director Robinson to add to this conversation, please.
I'm Gary Robinson with the Finance Department. I wanted to provide a little bit further background on the origin of the sales tax revenue. That is a revenue source that is authorized under state law for a local government to approve. In our case, approved by county legislative authority and the vote of the public. So that's the action that was taken by your predecessors and by the public. As such, those are tax dollars that come to the county. So the tax revenue comes to the county, and the county, through our budget, can make a decision how they're going to be spent, but it does require council appropriation for the funds to be spent. Interlocal agreement specifies funding is to be provided to South Sound 911, but initially it is an appropriation decision of the county related to county tax revenue. And I just want to clarify that for you, that it's revenue coming to the county based upon authorization of both the county council and the public. And in the budget that was submitted to council for the current biennium and the budget that you have before you now, it indicates that the county would be working with South Sound 911 on an agreement for the utilization of those funds. So I'm going to provide that additional background, Chair. Thank you.
That'd be helpful. Are we, Councilor Hitchin, you've been patiently waiting. I'll turn to you here in just a minute. I want to make sure we're tracking this conversation. I'm on page 7, section 7, page 20 of the budget book. Mr. Boki? The Radio Communications Internal Service Fund. And we see a transfer in of 4 point, where does this show, I guess, where does it show up? I'm not in the right section. Thought I had your microphone on.
I think I'm dead. Emergency Communications Fund on page 8.
Section 7, page 8.
Section 7, page 8, intergovernmental revenue, underfunding sources, 4.4 million. I believe that's the amount that. Oh, wait.
Oh, there it is. Thank you.
Okay.
Councilor Denson, anything else at this time?
No, thank you.
Mr. Booth?
Julie Demuth with the Finance Department. Just want to clarify the $4.4 million that's showing up in the budget book as intergovernmental revenue. We have provided this information to staff. There is an error in that number, so it's a miscategorization of revenue. The amount that we're requesting to receive back from South Sound 911 is $1.8 million a year to support public safety radio rates. There's $200,000 in there per year, which is a contract that we have with South Sound 911 to provide VHF overlay. So it's work they have contracted with us to do. So a total would be $4 million. $400,000 is a miscategorization of revenue. It should be shifted elsewhere. So I just wanted to clarify on the total amount.
Do you understand the request?
Yes, he received that information, and it was from Ms. DeMuth, and it broke out that amount. It also broke it out to what other entities are involved.
Councilor Hitchin, you've been patiently waiting.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to switch gears. There are, now I've lost it because I started more notes. 2 new emergency management coordinators that are grant and limited duration. Is that a 2-year grant? They're here for 2 years full. And what exactly are they doing? I'm curious about what's a management coordinator doing?
Mitigation work. That's the one area where grant funds have declined. We learned this from FEMA last week. Pierce County actually has the largest mitigation program in the country. We're really good at identifying projects to buy down risk. So these are mitigation funds, and they're dedicated to planning efforts. And you think, oh, great, the outcome is plans. But in addition to the plans and the work that is done to create them, the action itself makes all of these entities eligible for post-disaster mitigation funding. So it really opens up a lot of doors for our tribes, our special purpose districts. So it's working with all of our communities to update our plans and identify kind of shovel-ready mitigation projects that can be implemented quickly when funds become available.
So part of that is going to these different agencies and organizations and helping them develop their own emergency plan so that it aligns with whatever the county's got planned, or do we also work with our smaller cities and even our larger cities? I mean,
All
I
of them.
assume we do.
Amy, what's the number of plans we have total mitigation?
I believe it's 50 currently. And so we have a regional plan that then breaks down.
Amy,
by special-
I'm sorry.
Come on up.
People can't hear.
I apologize. Amy Gillespie, the Deputy Director of Pierce County Emergency Management. So within that mitigation planning effort, what we have is a regional plan that includes plans from cities, our special purpose districts, fire districts, all of which then become eligible for funds. So the one grant that funds one of the positions was we took an innovative approach. Our last plan update of that regional mitigation plan was due during COVID, and some of our fire districts and school districts, due to their staffing challenges during COVID, weren't able to complete their update. So that one position will work with them directly to do their updates. The other one will do a complete of that plan update. It's very focused on working with all of those jurisdictions, including any new jurisdiction or entity or agency wants to join the regional plan, to identify, based on our 19 hazards in our comprehensive emergency management plan, areas in which they want to mitigate against those hazards, identify those projects, and prepare them to be prepared to look at other grant funding to be able to close those gaps.
Is Anderson Island one of those planned? Okay.
Yes, we are very dedicated to ensuring that they have a very
I
specific
should ask about
plan.
Ketron as well, but they many of them have their own way to leave the island. My second question also is the intelligence analyst that's going to the Sheriff's Department. I'm going to make an assumption, and then I said, don't do that, ask. Should we need intelligence for Department of Emergency Management, we just call and say, hey, you're coming over here and staffing. I know, because I was there when we were working on the trial prep, and there's a lot going on there. I just want to make sure we're coordinating, because intelligence is incredibly powerful.
And that's one where the funding actually ran out, and the Sheriff's Department decided they wanted to keep that function going. We always have a connection with the Washington State Fusion Center, but it's just so much more valuable to have that capability within our walls. So yeah, just a phone call is all it takes.
Okay, thank you. My last not question, more of a statement after the conversation, and have appreciated the information that's come in, is I'm in the middle of several different redoing of ILA conversations, and perhaps now that the bond has retired, that maybe we need to crack open the ILA in 24-25 with South Sound 911 and have a conversation about how we get to that single unit. How do we actually figure out this funding now that it's not absolutely dedicated to a building, and that way we don't have this misalignment of budget cycles and the frustration that's caused and the concern about our smaller communities, how they're going to pay for radio systems. If it was clearly articulated in ILA that everybody agreed to, it makes our job easier, your job easier, our communities easier. So I'm just going to say maybe that's something we should really look at doing, and it takes a long time. But start the conversation early. So just leave it there.
We have about 10 minutes left in total for this conversation this morning before we need to break for lunch. Councilmember Denson.
Oh, sorry. I'm good, thank you. My light was just still on from last time.
We are spending a lot of time on, it's a very important division for public safety. We are spending a tremendous amount of time on a $4.4 million appropriation, and we need to resolve it. Please proceed. Councilmember Morrell.
I just want clarification, and I think this is a Mr. Robinson question. Since it, as with all countywide taxes, and the 1/10 of 1%, I care less if we're talking about the Marine Howard housing tax or the 1/10 of 1% for public safety. Does the council have the final say as how those dollars are distributed?
Gary Robinson with the Finance Department. For tax revenue that is coming to the county, the availability of utilization of those resources is based upon the budget is adopted by the council and approved by the executive. So there is an appropriation that you make for the behavioral health tax. There's an appropriation you make for the housing tax. Here you're making an appropriation for the 1/10 of a cent tax. Similar, the property taxes that are drawn in to the county treasury, those that come to the county for our purposes, you're appropriating those funds, appropriating the sales tax funds too.
So is it, and I'm trying to figure out, is this an assumed factoid that every dollar that we generate from the 1/10 of 1% that was passed back in the 90s, I guess, goes to South Sound 911? How did we morph to that?
There is, under state law, permissible uses of the sales tax. So it would be for emergency communication purposes, other purposes that relate to emergency response. It was a decision of the council and the executive through the interlocal agreement to have the funds transferred to South Sound 911, except for the funds that are utilized for debt service, the HF system that Ms. DeMuth referenced, and funds that are utilized by the county to cover the cost allocation, administrative cost of the county. And you know from our discussions on a cost allocation plan, the functions of our central services are allocated to all the fund sources that are within the county budget. So there is a allocation to South Sound 911, or not South Sound 1, well, it's an allocation of the 1/10 of a cent sales tax, and that is identified in the interlocal agreement that we have with South Sound 911.
Okay.
But it was a choice, of the county, South Sound 911 and City of Tacoma, the parties to the interlocal agreement, on how these resources would be allocated and used.
Okay. Thank you for making it a little bit clearer.
Thank you. Dr. Robinson, Director Ferguson, if you could try to conclude your last 3 slides in about 5 minutes.
So we covered the FTE changes. I think next slide. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think just in summary, there are 2 parts to this. There's inward facing and really ensuring that the 56-member team of emergency management reflects the community that we serve. So part of doing that is we did a complete review of our hiring practices, and we noticed that we were maybe putting up barriers that didn't need to be there. So we looked through and eliminated many of the degree requirements, because we really found candidly that individuals coming from retail and service industries have excellent problem-solving skills, but they may have excluded themselves from applying for positions because they thought a degree was required. So opening that up has really created better diversity for our staff, and I think we're better able to serve. And then it's, as we talked before, disasters are horrible, but they're exponentially worse for those who are already vulnerable. So it's making sure we plan with, not for, and making sure we have things in place to make sure we're addressing the needs of those who just may not be eligible for other support. So that's our priority. And again, if we plan for the most vulnerable, we're planning for all. And I think that concludes our presentation.
Just
capital
one
projects.
second. Well, we're going to go to recess for a few seconds. We'll be in recess for 2 minutes. Welcome back. Council's back from its unplanned recess. Director Ferguson, we're on the home stretch with your budget presentation.
Yes, and my final slide deals with a capital project that will be taking place at Raymond Hall. And this is similar to the project that we just completed on the county city building campus, which is a distributed antenna system. Raymond Hall has been operating on an old legacy radio system. So we are upgrading them to the 700 system like we did on the county city building campus so that any responder from any jurisdiction, their radios will work seamlessly on site. And that is it. Oh, no, I didn't. I thought I was done. I will be quick. We talked about some of the budget reductions. Obviously, one was the assistant fire marshal position. We had an extra hire position that we were able to eliminate, and of course some capital equipment. And as I stated earlier, these cuts are manageable, but any additional we'll have to discuss some service reduction. But for these that we proposed, we are able to manage. And then I think that is now it. Yes, thank you so much. Happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you. Final questions by Councilmembers Bubble we've heard this morning. Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. Director, my one question is about the capital project. As we're talking about going to a one unified system, is it going to be 700 or 800?
Yes, the work is seamless into the new system if we choose to go there.
Okay, so whatever we do at Raymond, we won't have to go back
Absolutely.
and do another capital project to.
Nope.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And that's where actually with the systems, the way they work now with the network, that's kind of the point. The work we're all doing now, it works in its existing format and it will work the same when the single system's developed.
Councilmember Denson.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That was the same question I had, except just going one bit further since we're going for a single system. Raymond Hall is in Tacoma. Couldn't we just have Raymond Hall served by the 800 system that exists now with all the antennas they have instead of adding an antenna and adding the 700 system there?
No,
Wouldn't that be
it's
cheaper?
covering, it already utilizes both 7 and 800, but this additional work will help in building coverage. Whenever you're inside a concrete building, it doesn't bode well for radio traffic, so these enhancements are being made to the facility itself to ensure in-building coverage.
Okay. All right. That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other. Councilmember Coover.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make an announcement in that this Saturday we have a disaster emergency first aid at the Lackamas Community Center. I don't know if the class is full, but if anyone is interested, let me know and I'll find out if there's still
always room for more.
Generally, there is. 8:30 to 5, Saturday.
Thank you for that announcement. And those community training opportunities are really important. Well, Director Ferguson, I'll have you know, in case you weren't watching, the council took the Great Shakeout very seriously last week. There's photo documentation of that. We practiced. Everybody in the chambers practiced together, and I think in the office of the county council. So we do take emergency management very seriously, and appreciate all the training and tools and planning your team do with all the different various communities in Pierce County. We have to bear down on this South Cell 911 issue as we work to develop the county's budget here in the home stretch. But we thank you for your time in explaining your budget proposal and appreciate everything you do and your team.
Thank you.
It's 12:10. I'm not seeing any lights. Are there any burning council discussion at this time before we break for lunch? I'll look for lights for my colleagues. Okay, we're going to break for lunch. We're going to come back from lunch, and we have a very packed afternoon. We have the medical examiner, we have finance and technology, information technology, and then we have the capital facilities plan, all to get through to complete our committee of the whole series before the council moves into its budget retreat starting tomorrow. So we have a very busy afternoon. Let's come back promptly at 1:30 to start. And with that, we'll adjourn our morning committee of the whole. We're adjourned.